All right, how's it going, everybody? It is another day of the NHL DFS strategy show. We've got a game that already started, and then we've got a main slate that's starting at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So hopefully we'll get all four games in this time. Maybe if we can avoid the five overtimes, we might have a full four gamer, but you got to dust off those five OT models if you really want to compete in NHL DFS these days. What a game that was last night, Cliffy.
I loved it. And, like Mike Milbury was obviously complaining about the overtimes. I think he just didn't want to work, which, like, that's kind of relatable. Like, he just wanted to go home. I mean, he doesn't get paid extra for extra
Right.
overtimes, right? But it's just cool watching history. Like, I remember watching that Penguins Flyers game 20 years ago that went to four overtimes. I was in high school, like, just staying up till I don't know when it would have finished, 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that. So I remember watching that game. So now, being able to remember watching this game is pretty special too. It's the one thing that bugs me is just putting the whistles away, right?
Yeah.
Like there's two penalties the entire in five overtime periods, and there's probably a penalty a shift. And like if they start calling penalties, I know they don't want to decide it, but you are deciding it by not calling penalties, right? Not
Yeah.
calling penalties is a choice. So
Yeah, that's what I always
other than
think
that,
too. Like I've heard smart people say that. It's like, oh, you got to let the players decide the game. Well, you're deciding the game if you're not calling an obvious penalty that could potentially
exactly.
give a penalty shot.
Like they instituted all those rules like obstruction and all that to make the game faster, more goals, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. And then it's like they just ignore them when the playoffs come. So like I kind of get the Leafs argument. I forget who it was. It was one of their players talking about, or not one of their players, one of the writers talking about how the team is built for the regular season because it is. It's built for speed. It's built, for transition, et cetera, et cetera. It's not built to get mauled in the corner every shift.
Right.
And that's just what happens in playoffs. And it's unfortunate because it does take away some of the skill component of the game.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we won't have to deal with five overtimes, unless you're looking to stay up till 3, 4 a.m. Because that's what it probably would have ended up being if Boston. Like I don't know how long it takes them to turn around, get the old team out of the locker room. They have to clean. I'm assuming very thoroughly. Get the new team in, start warm ups. Then you're like a half hour away from puck drop at the
Yeah, they
very least.
said they are saying it's a 90-minute turnaround to get
Okay.
everything clean and sanitized. And then you figure 30 minutes for warm-ups and all that. So you need 2 hours. So like,
Yeah.
you know, even if they start that game right after, if they start their cleaning everything right
Uh-huh.
after, yeah, they're playing till sunrise.
Yeah, and that was the East Coast game too. So I was thinking, they're fine. They started the Wild Vancouver game at 11 Eastern, but there it was a what was that 8 p.m. start, so it wasn't anything ridiculous for the people actually working. But yeah, that would have gone on forever. It would have been a long day. Already was a long day. They basically got over 2 games worth uh, in one. So today, we'll take a quick look at lineup study, but wanted to quick shout out to Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. They are the presenting sponsor of the NHL Strategy Show. Yahoo's now making it easier to play multiple lines. See, I got my entries in here, made them. I'll go back and edit if there's any changes. Maybe a surprise, a guy that's in the lineup, maybe some John Carlson or something like that. But Yahoo's making it easier to play multiple lineups in all sports with the CSV edit. If you guys do want to join on Yahoo, if you sign up through our promo code Awesemo, you can get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports rewards points. Yahoo Sports rewards points is essentially cash to play DFS with. So go support them. They've got some golf contests. They've got MLB, NBA. They're going to have some big NFL contests, and they're running some guaranteed overlay. Or I'm sorry, not guaranteed overlay. They're running some. Well, they have run guaranteed overlay in the past quite a few times, but they've got some no management fee contests. The next best thing for PGA, 25 cents, and that's filling up really fast. So if you want to get in that, you want to practice some PGA on Yahoo, you're gonna have to get in that now. They've also got a $3. Let's see, it's a 10 max, so I should get in that because I am miserable at PGA DFS, and for whatever reason, I keep trying it. But use the tools on the site, and you might have a lot more success than me, especially if you're playing a no management fee tournament. Lineup study from yesterday. It's not the greatest slate to study. just because we had one game go forever, and all these guys were accruing way more points than they would have if it was even like a 1 OT game. Is there anything you kind of take away from last night? Like, or do you just kind of flush that slate down the toilet?
I mean, there's nothing you can really do with it, right? You kind of look at the way the ice time is divvied up and see, who was favored as the games were on. Like you look at Columbus's fourth line, almost all of them, I think all of them played under 20 minutes. When you consider the game went, 160 minutes or something like that, like you can tell that fourth line isn't very useful. So that's kind of an indicator to us that, sometimes we do like to throw in third and fourth liners as one-offs, super cheap punts. It's the way roster construction goes. So sometimes you might want to look for guys on fourth lines sometimes, not often, sometimes. And it seems pretty obvious Columbus has no intention of using their fourth line to any serious degree. So, like, you can take stuff like that out of it. I think another thing is to realize how infrequent some events can be. Like, I think Liam Foudy was sitting on 4 shots since the second period. And I think Zach Bogosian, because I had him a lot as a punt defenseman, I think Bogosian was sitting on 2 blocks from the second period on, or at least the third period. So, like, it's pretty easy to go 5 or 6 periods without a shot or a block. Just ask Cam Atkinson. So, that's probably all I would take away. Like, it's a historic game. Like, it's not something you can plan for or prepare for, not something you can project moving forward. It's just something really cool that happened. And I also we give DK a lot of guff. I do, especially on Twitter, about the way they handle things. They made everybody whole last night, so everybody was free rolling. So I just want to give a shout out to DK for doing that, because they didn't have to. It's not strictly in the rules. So thanks for that. It kept your hockey fans happy.
Yeah, they haven't been super supportive of their NHL DFS product. I'd like to see some bigger contests, but yeah, really cool that DK, when everyone was wondering what was going on, ourselves included, they just said, well, you can edit your lineups, but you're free rolling for tonight. So it helped me. I was going to lose quite a bit of money last night, I'll show you guys quick on lineup study. But the winning lineup in the 20K winning lineup was a Tampa 1 Sergachev stack, who was on and off the top power play from what I saw. So he's listed as power play 2 here, but he played some with the top unit as well. Point Kucherov, Palat, Sergachev, Vasilevsky, 5-man Tampa stack. If you include the goalie, Rasmus Anderson, one-off, 1.7% ownership, had almost 17 DK points, and then just a basic full stack for not the chalkier Vegas line, but a chalky line nonetheless. The Stastny, Marchessault, and Smith line in Vegas took care of business late last night. Quick show mine. Let's see. My best lineup was 38th. You see how much I would have taken a hit there. I think I would have lost about half of my entry fees, maybe a little bit more. So I'm feeling pretty good about DK today. Let's go fill some contests over there. I know they're not the sponsor, but after you fill up Yahoo, go over to DK, and maybe we can get some even bigger NHL contests to play. Let's talk about these 4 games. Let's start with the Islanders and the Capitals. 2.6 implied total for the Islanders, 2.8 for the Caps. Varlamov and Holtby are going to be your goalies. As Boston 1 gets a full line goal apparently in the other slate, that's really too bad. I had a bunch of them. Obviously, I had to swap off, but here the big piece of news that I'm waiting for is John Carlson going to play? We're going to know this before the slate starts. I think he's going to. He's a game time decision. My thought is that he's going to. I'm going to build my lineups like he's playing, and then at 2:30 Eastern or a little bit later, you'll know. And I don't think there's anything wrong with making your lineups like he is going to play and then adapting if need be. You want to talk about the new Caps lines here that we saw?
Yeah, that's one thing to mention too, on top of John Carlson game time decision. I agree with you. I think he does play. Like, I think he was practicing before the round robin even finished. They're just being secretive with it. So that's what I'm assuming. Last game, they switched their lines at the start of the second period, and they went to a top line of Ovechkin, Backstrom, Oshie, and a second line of Vrana, Kuznetsov, and Wilson. So that's going to do a couple things. I think that's going to drive a lot of ownership to the top line because that entire top line's on the top PP unit together. It's a line that's very familiar. Ovechkin always carries a ton of ownership. I think our ownership projections has that line as the highest owned line on the slate. So I would expect a lot of ownership there. The thing is that line was good this year, but the Vrana, Kuznetsov, Wilson line at 5-on-5 anyway was really good offensively. And that's not really surprising. Kuznetsov and Vrana have typically put up good to great offensive numbers together over the last couple of years. I know Kuznetsov has struggled at times, and Vrana has taken the spot on the top PP unit because of it at times. But they just seem to have good chemistry in the offensive zone. Obviously, when you have a wrecking ball like Tom Wilson, it can clear up a lot of space for you. So I do like that second line. They'll come in at considerably lower ownership. I'm having a tough time not at least getting to some Washington one. That's just really what I'm struggling with here, is because I think if Washington puts up a DFS, tournament winning score, it's hard to see the power play not being a big factor in that. So maybe you want to do Kuznetsov, Vrana, and throw in Ovechkin or something like that. Get additional exposure to the power play. You still have Vrana, or maybe you want to throw in Wilson on the other side or something like that, because sometimes Wilson is the next man up on the power play if Oshie gets hurt, so on and so forth. So maybe you want to do a kind of like a broken power play stack and add in Vrana, or a broken power play stack, add in Wilson or something like that. That's probably the way I'm going to attack it. I haven't had time to make my lineups yet. I'm going to do that here soon. So I'm going to try to focus more on the power play and mixing in some of the line too, guys, because I really do think that second line is better at offense at 5-on-5. Certainly not on the power play, but certainly at 5-on-5. So that's kind of the direction I'm going to go here. Now, the interesting thing on the flip side for the Islanders is if you look at the ice time from their play-in rounds, the second line, Beauvillier, Nelson, and Bailey, not only were they playing on the power play together, they're getting more minutes than the top power play unit. Like Devin Taves played over a minute more per game on the power play than Ryan Pulock did. That second power play unit was actually getting favored ice time. And Ovechkin, or Vrana, Kuznetsov, and Wilson, as good as they were offensively this year, they weren't that good defensively. And I think that second line for the Islanders, I think the top line is going to get some ownership because I think the secret's kind of out on the Caps that they're not that great defensively. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that second line is going to carry a lot of ownership. They come in really cheap. They're a little over $12K. So if you want to stick them in with one of the expensive stacks later in the night, like Vancouver's Pettersson line or Colorado's top line or something like that, they afford you to do that. And like I said, they have perfect power play correlation. And they were good together this year. They're above average offensively. I think Brock Nelson had to like 25 or 26 goals. Like he had a nice season. Anthony Beauvillier, he has 21, 18, and 18 goals over the last 3 years as a 21, 22, 23-year-old playing for, one of the worst offensive teams in the league. Like he's really good as well. So I do like that Islanders second in line a lot today. I don't have a problem if people want to go to the top line. I want to avoid the ownership, and I think the power play ice time kind of tells the story here that Trotz isn't going to play favorites. It doesn't matter who's getting paid or who's the number one center, quote unquote. It's whoever's playing well, and that second line was playing well, and I think that's why they were getting the ice time. So put me in on the Islanders second line of Beauvillier, Nelson, and Bailey, and I'm also gonna have a fair amount of Washington. I'll call them broken power play stacks. I'm going to stick in some Vrana and some Wilson and maybe just flat out some Washington 2 stacks in there.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to like, as you kind of pointed out. The one thing that I kind of don't like, so I agree with what you said about Washington too. I mean, I guess I don't agree. Like the stats show that they're just good objectively at 5-on-5. They're coming in pretty popular for us, like one of the more popular filler stacks, I guess you would call, in this 15K range. And maybe they'll be a little bit lower than what we have, but I thought they were going to be sneaky, and it doesn't look like that's really going to be the case. So I think I like the Islanders side as well. I just love the Barzal line in general. Good numbers. I think they get a good matchup regardless of if they try to match Backstrom against them. I mean, that's perfectly fine with me.
Yeah.
If they
Yeah,
don't,
that's just one thing I want to quickly mention. Sorry to cut you
yeah,
off.
no, you're
Is
good.
that I don't think it really matters for Washington which top two lines you're matched up against. I'd actually rather get one of the top six matchups than get matched up against their third line.
For
So
for sure.
um,
Yeah, so
that's
they're going to
yeah,
be on the ice against. They're going to be in at least a solid matchup whenever they're on the ice, and they do a great job of generating chances, full power play correlation. You'd like their minutes to be higher, like you'd like them to play a little bit more, um, especially in close games. But they're playing enough for me to at least uh, consider them as one of my favorite stacks. So right now, I actually have the Islanders top line as my second highest exposed on FanDuel, and then on DraftKings they are. It looks like second as well. So I have a ton of exposure on everything that you outlined in this game. Washington won, some Washington too, but it's limited a little bit on FanDuel and DK because they're coming up a little bit popular for us. And then I like both of the Islanders' top two lines. I mentioned the top line, but I'm not forgetting about the second one either. They get perfect power play correlation as well. Yeah, this looks like just top six against top six. I'm hoping for a lot of goals and maybe one team, a lot of shots, a lot of goals, and maybe one team has a goalie that performs pretty well here. Maybe Holtby sees a bunch of volume and the Caps, one of their lines gets there. So I like stacking up one side of this game. I don't know that you necessarily need to game stack it, but I think there's a lot of ways where this one can be in a winning lineup for both sides.
yeah. This is probably isn't a game I would game stack. The Islanders are fairly good defensively. It is just you mentioned that this isn't really a great spot for Washington. But when you look at the rest of the slate, there's only really one good spot, I think, and that's Colorado with Arizona. Like Montreal and Philly, Montreal's a really good 5-on-5 team. Philly has been was playing really good at the break. They looked really good in the round robin. Carter Hart looks like he's blossoming into one of the top goalies in the world. Like that's not a good matchup. And then you have Vancouver, St. Louis. Like Vancouver's a good matchup for St. Louis, but on the flip side, St. Louis is one of the best defensive teams in the league. So I know this isn't a good matchup for Ovechkin and company, but it's just pretty much bad matchups across the board except for Colorado. So you really don't have a choice in the matter.
Yeah, there's just not, like you said, not that many good spots, and they're pretty affordable. Everything in this game, so I like it. I'm going to take advantage of it, and then hope to get a little bit different with my goalies and defensemen here. Now you mentioned Tays played some more time on the power play than Pulak.
Over a minute per game more than Pollock. That's a lot.
Yeah. I don't have a ton of either of those guys. Do you think Tays is going to be on the top unit, or is it going to be Pulak still, do you think?
I think it'll still be Pulak on the top unit, but they have been using Taves kind of on both at times. Taves has been on the first, been on the second. He's been mostly on the second, though. But like I said, that second unit, even the forwards have been earning more ice time than the top unit.
Yeah, that's definitely a concern with Pulak at 5,500. And I'm going to have a bunch of Carlson. Like these, even the guys in the first game, I can't remember who it was. It was his last slate or the slate before, maybe the Sunday slate or the Saturday slate. Like these top defensemen that get ruled in late, they're just not owned at all. So
Hedman was what 4% yesterday.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, he was 4% yesterday, and then Sergachev was like 9. Like Ryan McDonough was like 7.
Yeah, and so Hedman wouldn't have had 28 points or whatever he had, but he was still having a really solid game even going into the second period. So Carlson, one of the highest upside defensemen, as we saw a number of times during the beginning of the season where he was just unconscious. I mean, I'm all over Carlson if he's in, and I'm assuming he's going to be.
Yeah, if that power play goes off, a big reason it's him and Ovechkin, right? Like Carlson's his setup guy. So, yeah, I would be getting quite a bit of Carlson in today if possible because I think we're gonna I don't think we're gonna see 4% ownership like yesterday, but I think it's gonna be low again.
Yeah, absolutely love it. I think that's good for this game. I'm hoping there's a pretty nasty storm going on outside my house. So I hope we don't lose power or anything because I am producing this. But okay. That'll be so. If we cut out, That is going to be why. It's not because I needed to get off the stream or do anything important. There's nothing more important right now than NHL DFS.
Of course.
All right, let's go to the Coyotes and the Avalanche. 2.4 implied total for the Yotes, 3.1 for the Avs. Kemper, and is it going to be Grubauer or Francouz?
I assume it's Grubauer.
Yeah, that's who I have in the projections, but we're showing Francouz. Maybe he's probable on another site. Anyways, going to be an expensive goalie regardless. I think we're going to be on the same page in this one. Arizona, even though they did win, they were giving up a ton of shots, specifically to that Nashville top line. What are you doing with this one here?
Yeah, I mean, Colorado won they're pretty easily my top projection today. Like you mentioned, Nashville's top line ran all over them. They hit some posts. Kemper played well. With hockey, stuff happens. But if Colorado does the same thing to them, I don't think Arizona's going to have a very good time in this series. I'm probably going to have like 1/3 Colorado 1/Colorado power play stacks. Like I'm going to have just a ton of Colorado. I mean, it sucks to eat the chalk, but sometimes it's chalk for a reason, right? Like this is just a really good spot. On the flip side, I would mention that also makes it a good matchup for Kemper as well. Mm-hmm. I will definitely have some Kemper in my non-Colorado lineups, but Colorado going up against that Arizona top line, like Phil Kessel up against Nathan McKinnon, just won't even be close. So do love Colorado. One thing I want to mention is that the Washington Islanders series, we're expecting the line matching to go 1-2-3, line 1, line 2, line 3. Colorado does it a bit different. Buddy at the Dauber Hockey that I write with, Adam Daly Fry, runs a line matching sheet that you can subscribe to. If anybody wants it, I can put you in contact with him. You can subscribe there. Colorado's second line of Kadri, Nichushkin, Landeskog typically takes the third line from the opposing team. So that means Stepan, Connor Garland, and Clayton Keller are going to be going up against the third and fourth lines from Colorado. That's interesting to me because the third line from Colorado, like Donskoy is good offensively. I don't think he's very good defensively. Comfer's like maybe average. And Burakovsky's good offensively, not good defensively. Like I think if there's a place you can attack Colorado and find some success, it's against that third line and maybe even the fourth. And if that second line from Arizona sees a fair bit of them, I think they could find some success in this game. So to just not give you the diatribe of stack Colorado 1, I am going to have some Arizona 2. It'll be part of a game stack I have with Colorado. I'm going to have them in probably with my Washington power play stacks or whatever. It's a line that comes in under 12K. They looked really good against Nashville. At least Connor Garland and Clayton Keller did. Like Clayton Keller looked like a completely different player from the last 2 years. Connor Garland he looked like Connor Garland normally does, but Keller really popped out to me. So I do like that line. I'm going to be on Arizona too. Like I'm not going to have a ton of them. They'll probably be in 3 out of 20 lineups or something like that, but I expect that to be way above the market. I'm going to have a lot of Colorado power play. I noticed Rantanen's price has jumped up just a little bit. So it is getting expensive. So you are going to have to find them with filler stacks like we talked about. I've noticed that Graves and Eric Johnson are getting really expensive as well. That makes me want to go to Sam Girard. Sam Girard played a lot of minutes. I believe he played the second most minutes of any Colorado defenseman in the round robin, maybe the third. But he's a really good puck mover. He'll play the second power play unit for them. So I do like Sam Girard. It's kind of like get away from a car, be different type play. On the Arizona side, believe it or not, Alex Goligoski led their defenseman in ice time per game against Nashville, not Oliver Ekman-Larsson. And Goligoski was actually running the second power play unit, not Jacob Chikrin. So I think Alex Goligoski is probably one of my top defense plays on the entire slate today. Now, I'm not going to run out and say, go put 40% Alex Goligoski in your lineups. What I am saying is that in lineups where I need that defenseman in that mid 3K range, he's at the top of my list. So I do like Arizona too. Connor Garland, Derek Stepan, and Clayton Keller. I do like Alex Goligoski as a one-off defenseman, or you can even throw him in with your Arizona stat because he does play the power play with them. And I obviously love everything about Colorado's top line, Colorado power play. You could even go down to the second line if you want.
Did you talk about Arizona 1? Did you say that they were going to get matched up against the Kadri line?
Yeah, no, they're probably gonna take the top line.
Oh, I see. Got it.
Against McKinnon, but even like it's still not a very good matchup.
No.
I'm probably gonna stay away from the Arizona top line because I think anybody that does try to be contrarian and go with Arizona will probably go there. I think our ownership rankings kind of bear that out.
Yeah, they're a little bit more popular than I like. Talking about Arizona 1.
Yeah, we have them over 10% and more owned than Washington 2 that we just talked about.
Yeah. Oh, and on DraftKings, I think I was looking for FanDuel for.
Yeah, Washington on DraftKings. 2, and Arizona 2, we have them under 5%. So I think that's one of the filler stacks I'm going to look for.
Yeah, I like the pivot to the second line here. Save a little bit of money, especially if you're going with some of those caps in the first game, or if you're trying to jam in Pietrangelo or Philly's top line or something. I like the call on Arizona 2. Arizona 1, I think, is kind of the example of, well, and there's a couple examples. Montreal 1, Arizona 1, like they look good from just a raw point projection when you factor in the totals. They just look like a good value, and I think that's why you're seeing them with probably more ownership than they should, because the matchup isn't very good here against Colorado for this Arizona top line. So they're going to be a line I target more when they get the last change, because then they'll obviously have better matchups, or what they perceive as better matchups. McKinnon's popular, Rantanen's popular, Nemestikov is going to get left off some. I'm going to have some full stacks. I'm going to have some full Colorado power play stacks with Landeskog and Kadri, McKinnon, Rantanen, and Cale Makar. It gets pretty expensive pretty fast, but there are some like two-man third liner stacks that I think are viable in some of these other games. Yeah, I like Colorado. I don't know if they're popular, and it seems like I'm kind of with the chalk, but I just hope that my lineups are at least somewhat unique. That's the only thing I'm worried about when playing McKinnon. Pretty much always, he's awesome. You can play him as a one-off if you'd like. You can play McKinnon, Rantanen. You can pretty much do anything with this Colorado top 6 for me. So just another game that's chalk, another team that's chalk that just should be, in my opinion. So I don't see a real reason to get off. It's not like they're 40% or anything like that. It's a 4-game slate, and they're going to be 15-20% as a full stack, and that's perfectly fine with me. Anything else you want to mention here? Oh, I did notice the Goligoski thing. So the Goligoski.
Yeah, just the last thing I want to know is this. Sometimes I like to watch line movement. It's gone from -180 Colorado last night to -167 Colorado today. So the Arizona side's getting hit. So I don't want to say we're going to get lower Colorado ownership than we expect, but cross our fingers, it's under 20%.
I think if you add in Nemestikov,
yeah,
McKinnon, Rantanen is probably going to be over 20%, those two guys. But I just look at the full stack when I'm full stacking, at least. So Nemestikov might be under 10, even if those guys are over 20. And then I wouldn't worry about it, like if you're going McKinnon, Rantanen, and Kadri or Landeskog or something like that. You're already going to get a unique lineup construction. So I'm not too worried about it, having kind of the third wheel guy. Nemestikov isn't the worst player in the world for 3,800 either. Makar and Graves. I'm targeting Graves more on FanDuel. And then Makar right now, he's my highest non-John Carlson defenseman. So hoping our ownership is close on Makar. It looks really good. I'm fine using him as a one-off or a two-man with McKinnon. I just like him a lot for $6K and can afford him in a lot of my lineups. I think that's good for this game. Arizona defenseman outside of Goligoski, who's just playing a ton of minutes. I don't have a ton of interest in Ekman Larson, Chikrin's okay. The minutes are just kind of hard to project for these guys.
Yeah, it's just, I'm probably just going to have mostly Goligoski just because most of my Arizona is going to be Arizona too, and he's their defenseman. So I don't think I'll have much else other than Goligoski from them.
Did we mention Kemper? I can't remember. 7K.
Yeah.
Going to see a lot of volume.
Yeah. He's probably going to be I think he's going to be my second highest goalie.
Makes sense, even if you're playing a lot of Colorado, to have some exposure on the other side. It's a wide range of outcomes for Kemper tonight, which is exactly what you want.
Just ask Korpisalo.
Yeah, I don't know if we can project him for like 84 saves, but I think he might get to 59, 60 or so. Maybe viable in your cash games or something. Canadiens and the Flyers, 2.5 implied total for Montreal, 2.9 for Philadelphia. Carey Price and Carter Hart are your goalies. What are you doing with Montreal 1 here? I'm interested to hear your take. Can we play them against, I think it's going to be the Couturier line?
Yeah, they're going to be matched up top line versus top line. It crossed my mind that maybe Gallagher and Tatar probably have a little shine worn off of them because they really didn't do anything in that Pittsburgh series, right? It was all Kotkaniemi and Suzuki and all those guys, Lehkonen. So maybe Montreal 1 comes in lower than we might expect. The one thing that worries me is there has been a good amount of line movement. Montreal was plus 142 last night. Right now they're sitting at plus 131, so they're getting bet up a little bit. So maybe there's going to be more ownership on Montreal than we might expect. Little note on the Phillies lines. We're not for sure, but it looks like Jake Voracek's going to be back in the lineup. Like, I'd assume he's going to be back in the lineup. They're saying Bunneman's going to be out. But it's a question of what that does to the power play because James Van Riemsdyk is going to be back in the lineup, and he had played on the top power play unit quite a bit this year. Joel Farabee is presumably going to stay on the top line, but that's not for sure. And he was on the top power play unit in their last game when Voracek was out of the lineup. And Voracek had been on the top power play unit for their first 2 round robin games. So there are 3 legitimate contenders to be the 4th forward on that top unit, and we don't know who it's going to be. So I don't know how people want to attack that. I'd say the least likely is Van Riemsdyk. Mm-hmm. And then maybe it's just like 50-50 between Voracek and Farabee. So my assumption is that it's going to be Farabee. That's kind of what I'm operating with, is that Joel Farabee is going to be on the top line, top power play unit. But I think it's one of those cases where, we could see the second or third power play. If things don't go well, then Voracek's right back up on the top unit. So I don't mind something like Couturier, Giroux, Voracek, even if Voracek starts the game on the third line or something like that. Like, that would be completely fine to me.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. If you thought it was actually going to be Farabee sticking around, assuming Voracek was going to play here.
Yeah, honestly, I think what's going to happen is you're going to see Voracek slide to the third line, Farabee stay where he is, and Van Riemsdyk go to the 4th line.
Okay, so that's and then
and then Van Riemsdyk will just pop in on the second power play unit. Maybe he'll be on if they need a goal in the final 90 seconds or whatever. So I'm assuming Farabee top line, top power play, but that's just an assumption because we won't get final confirmation. This is a really tough matchup for both sides, but I kind of like that Philly second line. They did work in the round robin games. I believe Lawton had a 2-goal game, and Kevin Hayes had 3 assists, 4 assists, or something like that. So they did well. We have the Philly second line matching up against the Montreal second line, and that's with Drouin and Armia. Drouin, my arch nemesis, scored in their 3rd game last round. He had 1 good game, but he hasn't really looked that good. Like, he's looked better, but still not good. Joel Armia, I think he's fine, but he's not great. And Kotkaniemi, he's fine, but not great. I think Kotkaniemi's certainly taken a big step forward, and he's a lot better than he showed earlier in the season, but I don't think he's quite that, the defensive force that Nick Suzuki or Philip Deneau might be right now. So I think if you're looking for the best matchup against the Habs, it would be the second line of Lawton, Hayes, and Konechny. Now, the problem is Konechny's on the top power play unit, Hayes is on the second, and Lawton isn't even on the power play. So you're relying on broken goals or full line goals at even strength to get there. That's kind of tough, and they are kind of expensive. Mm-hmm. They come in over $15K. That's when you look at the prices across the board, Colorado's second line's under 15K, Arizona's second line's under 12, Washington's second line is still cheaper, the same price as Philly's second line. So like, it's not that cheap. This isn't a filler stack. You can't put them with Colorado power play or Washington power play or something like that. So it'll depend where else you want to go, whether you get to Philly too. But I am going to have a few shares of them today because I think that's the best matchup against the Habs right now, is if you can avoid that top line, if you can avoid Danault and Lehkonen, if you can get up against Armia and Drouin, I think that's where the Flyers are going to find success. So that's why I'm going with Philly too. On the Montreal side of things, like, I'm not stacking the Habs. I just worry about line changes. The power play isn't good, so you could see a lot of swaps there too. I'm mostly focusing on the defenseman. Jeff Petrie, I think, is still too cheap. He's under 5K. Brett Kulak, if you need a punt, I don't mind him because he's played well with Petrie. I thought that pairing's been good for them. So I'm probably going to be focusing more on the defenseman for the Habs, and for the Flyers, it'll be mostly the second line, maybe something like some one-off Van Riemsdyk.
I just have a hard time playing Montreal. So I agree with you on Philadelphia too. And like, you look at their price compared to Montreal 1, they're more expensive. And people will see Gallagher's name and Tatar and Suzuki in full power play correlation and just want to jam that in. But matchup against Couturier is like one of the worst in the NHL. Yeah. He's one of the best two-way centers in all the NHL. Maybe one of the best, or he is one of the best defensive centers as well.
And it's not like their defensemen are slack either, right?
No.
Like, a top pair of Provorov and Niskanen is a pretty good. It's an intimidating top pair. So I'm with you. I'm pretty much out on Montreal too. Like, Montreal 1, like I said, I don't think I'll be stacking the Habs other than some one-offs today.
Yeah. So I'm not getting too close to where the field's at on Montreal 1. Now there's always a chance that they could get there, score a full line goal and get something going on the power play. But you kind of need to know what you're going up against if you're looking to play Montreal 1. I would kind of advise against a lot of them.
And one thing I want to mention is, I don't think we've gotten exactly what the problem is, but Brendan Gallagher's kind of looked injured in the first few in the play-ins. Like, I forget if it was the first game or the second game. He got crunched along the boards and he was kind of laboring and he took some shifts off, and like, he obviously finished and he played the rest of the games, but he's the type of guy that if he's not feeling right, like, he can't play because he doesn't bring anything else to the game other than his speed and toughness, right, and his grit. And if he can't do what he normally does, he's ineffective. So, like, I'm a little bit concerned about Brendan Gallagher. That's another reason why I'm off the Montreal top line. I kind of want to see how he does, see how he looks in a tough matchup before I play him. But just at the same time, going up against Couturier, I just almost automatically X out the players anyway. It's just, the possible injuries, the cherry on top.
Yeah. I think I'm in agreement there. I kind of have some interest in this third Philadelphia line as far as third lines go. I mean, I like Ayoub Kubel for 3,100. He's a guy who can score multiple goals as he did last game. Now, that's going to happen once every couple months. But if he's playing with Voracek and Derek Grant, and that line is just 12-6, 12-7, I want to say, doing some quick mental math there. I think that's about as good as you're going to do for third lines today. And playing 150 lineups, I have to dip down into some of these, and that's what I'm getting to quite a bit.
Yeah, I do like that line as well. Obey Kubel's looked pretty good for them all year, and he's obviously looked good in the round robins with that 2-goal game. Derek Grant was a nice pickup for them. Like you said, if they move Voracek, like, Voracek's not the guy that he was 3 or 4 years ago, but he's still a first line 2-way winger. If you can put him on the third line, that could tilt the matchups, especially if you get down to like going up against Victor Mete and Xavier Ouellet or something like that.
Yeah. Philly's really scary the more we talk about them. I know they've been red hot going back to 5 months ago, but man.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, Shane Gostisbehere only got in one game in the round robin, but that one game he had 2 assists, and like, I watched the whole game and he looked like Shane Gostisbehere of a couple years ago. Like, there's one specific play, and it's one thing that he does often. It's like he fakes a shot from the left point, and then he climbs down the wall and he acts like a winger looking for a cross seam pass or maybe a drop back pass or something like that. And I didn't see that a lot of that from him this year, but I saw it 2 or 3 times in the one round robin game he played. It looked like the Shane Gostisbehere of old. Now the problem is he won't be on the top power play unit. He might get some second power play time, but he's on the third pair, so maybe he only plays 15, 16, 17 minutes, something like that. So I'm not going to run out and say, you got to get 20% Shane Gostisbehere in your lineups, but I'm probably going to make sure I have at least 1 or 2 somewhere.
Yeah, I know the announcers were talking about how impressed Philadelphia, like the coaching staff was with him. So maybe a little bit of a resurgence here for Gostisbehere in these playoffs. Because he was a guy who, like, we played all the time 2 or 3 years ago in NHL DFS. Like, he was the top power play guy. He was priced in like the 5 and 6Ks every slate.
Well, that's why, like, this year at the beginning of the season, it's like, oh man, I can roster Gostisbehere for 3,400, and it's like, well, here's your 1 block shot.
Yeah, maybe. All right, let's go to the last game of the slate. If you guys could help us out and hit the like button, we appreciate you being here. It helps us out a lot, helps us grow the channel, and helps us get by the YouTube algorithm. So 2.6 implied total for the Canucks, 2.8 for the Blues. Markstrom and Binnington are going to be your goalies here. And we're seeing Blues being pretty chalky. What do you have to say about this one here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the mind that Vancouver's not a very good 5-on-5 team. In fact, I think they're quite bad 5-on-5, at least defensively. And Markstrom has really made up for it. He's a good goalie. He played well this year. Played well, very well against Minnesota. That's the scary thing from Vancouver. It's not their team defense. It's not their penalty kill specifically. It's Markstrom. But like I mentioned yesterday, I'm not afraid of attacking good goalies. Obviously, it didn't work out with Chicago, but if you're not afraid of attacking good goalies, you can get good players at low ownership because people will fade good goalies. I don't know if Markstrom's quite to that level yet, but ownership will change. Like we saw with the Caps this year, based on whether Braden Holtby was in net or not, right? Like, because Holtby was getting shelled almost every game. So I'm in on the Blues too. It's just a matter of which line. The top line for me, it sucks because they're going to be super chalky. But the top line for me is the clear favorite to pick, and it's because of the matchup. They're going to get the Horvat, Eriksson, Tanner Pearson matchup, and that's the one you want. The Pettersson, Miller, Besser line, for all the offense that people talk about them, they're probably the team's best defensive line as well. So I kind of want to avoid that. O'Reilly, Perron is going to take that matchup against Pettersson, so probably going to avoid that. I don't have a problem with playing O'Reilly, Perron. I think they're probably about as good of an offensive line as the top line. At least that's what they've been the last couple of years. It's just I don't think it's a good matchup specifically. So I'm going to go more towards Schwartz, Shen, Tarasenko. One thing I wanted to mention, I don't know if I mentioned this in one of our shows from the round robins, but Vladimir Tarasenko is playing both power play units now. He's playing the first and second unit. We see that with Ovechkin in Washington. Where Ovechkin just stays on the ice. Tarasenko was doing the same thing in the round robin. So I don't want to say, sometimes I say broken stacks, you can leave a guy off. I don't know if Tarasenko is going to ever be a guy you want to leave off now. If he's playing both power play units and racking up, 6-7 power play minutes per game, you don't want to leave that guy off your stack. So as chalky as it is, I do like St. Louis one. Especially for the price. When you consider the matchup, it's just gold. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up Tyler Myers. He took 7 minor penalties in the first round. Vancouver was one of the most penalized teams in the play-ins. They were close to the top 10 most penalized team this season. So maybe St. Louis can draw us 4 or 5 power plays here. That'd be nice. So that's another reason why I'm kind of on the Blues, specifically their power play guys. Going down to the third line, I actually do like the Bozak Thomas Blaze, but I don't know if it's something I'd 3-man. I think it's more one of those where I duo Bozak and Thomas, or duo Thomas and Blaze, or something like that. Yeah, obviously you can 3-man them if you're going super expensive, like Ovechkin and Carlson, and then you add in Nathan McKinnon as one-off or something like that. It's just that I would probably do something more like Bozak Thomas with Parayko or something like that, or Bozak Thomas with Dunn, or even Bozak Thomas Pietrangelo, because Pietrangelo would be on the ice a fair amount with him. Because I think just the one matchup you want to avoid from Vancouver is that second line, which is why I'm out on O'Reilly Perron. If you can go up against, Virtanen and Sutter, or who I don't even know who's on the fourth line for Vancouver, like Beagle and whomever, I think that's where that third line can do some damage. Robert Thomas, I think, is just going to be I think he's blossoming into a star. He reminds me of a slower Braden Point. I think he's that good. I think he's that good offensively already. He's just being hidden on the third line of a very good team. So I do like Bozak, Thomas, Blaze, some mix 2 out of the 3. I don't think I'm going to 3-man stack them. As a filler mix, I do like St. Louis 1 quite a bit. So they're going to be one of my more popular stacks today. On the Vancouver side of things, I hate stacking against the Blues. It's just good goaltending, slow pace. You're pretty much relying on luck. So I'm not in too heavy on Vancouver today. Bo Horvat is a one-off favorite for me because he always comes in at way lower ownership than like Pedersen or JT Miller, because he's by himself on the top line on the top power play unit, but he does score power play goals. I think he got double digits this year and double digits last year. So somebody will correct me on that, obviously, if I'm mistaken. But Horvat can finish on the power play. So he is a one-off for me that I'm using today. Other than that, it's probably just going to be Horvat, Markstrom from the Canucks for me. Top line St. Louis, third line St. Louis stacks on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of St. Louis. I think they're awesome. But playing the way I play, a lot of 3-man stacks, and I think you can go with the 3-man stack of St. Louis 3, but you're going to be paying up. So you might think you're being sneaky playing Washington 1 with Carlson and then St. Louis 1 and whatever the best value defenseman is, but you're probably going to be duped, which isn't something that you should be doing too often. St. Louis 1, yeah, that's my favorite line here, but ownership's a thing, and ownership is telling me kind of to not go there as often. So I'm about half the field on St. Louis 1. They're going to be a very popular filler, and it stinks to not have as much of the field on them because I think it's a good spot, but I think there's other lines that might not be in as good of spots that are getting way lower ownership. So it's like the value thing we talk about in event-based sports with MLB. You see the cheap chalk team popular all the time because they're good value, but you need to score goals at the end of the day. And St. Louis 1, their numbers at 5-on-5 actually aren't as good as I thought. They just play so slow, and similar to St. Louis 2. So I think but St. Louis 2 comes at half the ownership. So if this holds up, then I may get to the field on St. Louis 2, but right now we're showing like Perron in the mid-teens, and he's my highest owned St. Louis guy right now, and I've got him at 10%. Highest owned forward. I've got a bunch of Pietrangelo one-offs and with stacks. But yeah, it's just good spot for St. Louis, but I don't know how often they put up like 3 or 4 goals here. They just might just grind this game to a halt. And that's the thing I always worry about with them.
I agree with you on that. I just think it's a really good matchup. That's the flip side for me, is that this isn't St. Louis, hosting Columbus or Minnesota or something like that. This is St. Louis hosting a team that's just marginally better than Chicago defensively. You know what I mean? So, maybe not that bad.
I wonder if people will just overthink it, and maybe that's what I'm doing right now. And they'll just, like, St. Louis 1 and 2 will just end up being like 12% apiece.
I think you'll probably see them. I think you'll see St. Louis 1 quite a bit higher owned, just because of the power play correlation, right? Like a lot of people aren't going to run out to roster Sammy Blaze, but I do think they're going to be relatively close. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Shen comes in at like 22% and then O'Reilly comes in at like 15, 16.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that wouldn't shock me in the least.
Yeah, that's not that appealing to me on a 4-game slate. I'm fine playing chalk Nathan McKinnon at 30% here, but just a team that plays this slow, it feels like if I go heavy here, which I'm not going to, that I just end up rooting for one goal in the third period in a 1-0 game. I just can't stay in St. Louis.
Trust me, man. After watching the St. Louis Blues all year, you'll be rooting for one shot.
Yeah. They're just so slow. On the other side, Vancouver won. This is another one. Or I'm sorry, the Pedersen line. It should be specific here. They're two some places. They're one elsewhere. They're one on the screen. The Pedersen line, really brutal matchup against O'Reilly. This is another one where if I'm playing limited lineups tonight, I wouldn't have a piece of them at all. I know St. Louis looked bad, but that's really the only thing that you could talk yourself into for this being a better matchup than what it looks like to me. So 150, I rarely X people out. I usually just limit them to like a couple lineups out of 150. That's probably what's going to happen here with Vancouver 1, and I'm not sure I'm going to even get to any of them. Just a miserable spot against O'Reilly. And then I agree on Horvat. His line mates aren't great, but he still does a good job of generating offense. And if you wanted to just one-off him, by all means, 5,800 is a fine price.
It's just a one-off power play goal for a guy that's going to come in. I'm assuming low single digits.
Yeah, he will.
So that's all.
Any other defensemen? Are you playing Quinn Hughes? Alex Edler is pretty cheap on FanDuel. He's a guy I got to quite a bit. And then I like Pietrangelo. He's not quite at Carlson level for me or even Makar, but he's probably going to be in 20-ish% of my lineups, even though I'm low on the St. Louis stacks.
Yeah, I'm probably like Pietrangelo is going to be in with my St. Louis stacks. Not all of them, some of them. I usually play some one-off Justin Falk just because that's a guy that just fires a shot indiscriminately, and he's always a threat for the 5-shot on goal bonus, even though he never gets within 50 feet of the net.
Just shoots it right into the shins. Or 20 feet wide.
Hope he can avoid some shin pads and hit some goalie pads today. But he's a guy I just automatically put in, not automatically, usually put in lineups kind of as a one-off. Sometimes Chris Tanev is a guy that's always on my radar because he's a block bonus threat every single game. But like you mentioned with St. Louis, they're not a super high-paced team. Like, is he going to block 3 out of 24 shots or 25 shots on goal? So Chris Tanev's, I don't know if he's going to be in my lineups, but he's usually on my radar. It's going to be mostly Pietrangelo and some Justin Falk. I do have interest in Markstrom, though. Okay. Just because he's in the mid-price range. So goalies, lineups where I need a goalie 74, 75, 7,600. He's the guy that's going to fit for me.
Fair enough. Are there any punt defensemen that you're looking at, like in the sub 3K range? We haven't really mentioned any of those guys. I was having trouble finding any I'm comfortable with. It's pretty bad. Cheap.
Yeah, I mean the one guy that always jumps out to me is Nick Jensen, just because I think he's a good puck mover.
2,500.
Just because,
there you go.
Yeah, just because I think he's a good puck mover, but he's not a peripherals guy. So for him to get there, he probably needs a goal. He needs to get on the score sheet. He probably won't do it through shots and blocks. So Nick Jensen is a guy that's usually on my list. I think Nikita Zadorov is mint price as well, and he's either on the second or third pair for Colorado. But honestly, I usually say it to anybody that asks if I have a $2,500 defenseman I'm using today. I'm like, are they in the lineup? Like, that's pretty much it. If you're rostering a $2,500 defenseman, you can't be like, oh, what's the great matchup here? It's like, is the guy in the lineup? That's all that matters. Yeah. It's a punt for a reason.
Yeah, Zadorov was a guy I got to sprinkled throughout my lineups when I needed a min salary guy. But the minutes are always the question with him. it's slim pickings down here, even more so than usual is what I noticed. You want to quick give your well, actually, let's talk about Yahoo really quick. Yahoo's making it much easier to play multiple lineups. They're the sponsor of the show. That's why we are talking about them, and because they're offering some no management fee tournaments. If you're playing PGA tomorrow, or even if you're not, good reason to play over on Yahoo. They've got a 25 cent no management fee tournament. They've also got the $3 10 max, just $30. You can play management fee free. On other sites, they call that rake. Yahoo calls it management fees. So it's the same thing we're talking about. They're not taking anything. Everything that gets put into the tournament by the entrance comes out. So if you want to join Yahoo, use promo code Awesemo to get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports rewards points. Come take some of my money. I'm playing some NHL stuff. I got a couple lineups over there, so feel free, take my money. I think I started a player that wasn't playing yesterday, trying to swap out all my DraftKings and FanDuel lineups. So even more incentive than the low management fees over on Yahoo. Predictions for any of these series? Any hot takes?
I don't have a lot of hot takes. If I'm not mistaken, I had the Islanders going over Washington in 6, and I had Colorado sweeping. I had Philly going over in 7, I believe, and St. Louis in 5. I honestly think Montreal can beat Philly, and I know I'm a Montreal fan. Right? Yeah, I know I'm a Montreal fan, so it kind of looks homerish. But we've said it all along. Montreal's a good 5-on-5 team. They just need Carey Price to not suck, and they need to stay out of the penalty box. So if Carey Price can keep playing like he did against the Penguins, and their 5-on-5 is kind of the same, I think they could give Philly a top test here. Beyond that, not a whole lot. Just wanted to mention some one-offs I'm looking at today. I usually like to make a list of one-off players that are in different lines, whether it's a power play or a good spot or a good match that I try to get in. So there are a handful of guys: Brock Nelson, Jacob Vrana, Connor Garland, Jonas Donskoy, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, Joel Farabee, Robert Thomas, Bo Horvat. Among those players is where a lot of my forward one-offs are going to come tonight. And I'm going to have I'm going to have a pretty fair split between Carter Hart and Carey Price, I think.
All right. I like it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have quite a bit of my goaltending come out of that game.
I like it. I got the Capitals in 7 here. I'm just doing this off the top of my head. Just thinking about players that I want to see play more. I'd like to see Ovi move on.
Jake's watchability guide.
What's that?
Jake's watchability guide.
Exactly. Yeah. Anybody that's exciting to watch. I think Colorado dusts Arizona here. Probably 4 games, like you mentioned, or 5. And then I'll take Philly, but I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be just Montreal's going to be a pushover here. If they can stay out of the penalty box, they could compete here. So I'll go Philadelphia in 6, and then St. Louis probably in 7. I
like the Vancouver fans, but the last couple days, it's just ever since they beat Minnesota, you're getting a little big for your britches, boys. You're
talking about Nolan, aren't you?
Well, that's one of them. I just want to see Vancouver. I enjoy watching them, but let's slow our roll here. They're not a dynasty yet.
All right, not a dynasty yet. That is the kind of analysis that we offer here on the NHL DFS strategy show. We will have another show tomorrow. Cliffy, are you going to be on that one?
I think I am, yeah.
All right, wonderful. Well, we'll see you guys back here in 23-ish hours. Good luck on today's slate. Get in Slack for that Carlson news. It's going to come out a half hour before lock. And good luck, everybody.
Good luck.